You're up late with Dr. Chace. This is Dr. Chace. I am a depth psychologist, psychotherapist, and a licensed professional counselor in Purcellville and Reston, Virginia. If you aren't familiar with the area, Reston is about 20 minutes outside of Washington, D.C., so you could say I am in the thick of it all, or the swamp, depending on how you see D.C. these days. It is a diverse area, to be sure, especially compared to, let's say, Portland, Oregon, where I lived for 15 years. But even with all the diversity, the coffee still sucks here, unfortunately. Starbucks is not good coffee, I hate to tell you, but for 7 bones, you can get a thick and tasty cappuccino at Happy Creek in Purcellville, Virginia. If you want to drive to Lancaster, PA, Chestnut Hill Cafe also serves up a nice espresso, comparable to the Pacific Northwest. Now, Purcellville, Virginia, where I live, is steeped in wine, beer, cocktails, equestrian life, beautiful, beautiful scenery, and it does have a decent coffee shop, thankfully. However, these days I just brew my own. These days, I do not shower every day. I often shower late at night or early in the morning, and it is late at night when the cicadas are singing outside, the horses quietly grazing, the red foxes lit up by fireflies in the meadow, and the house finally quiet, that I tend to do all of my thinking. Sometimes I stand outside on the deck and I literally talk to myself out loud, or I talk to whomever might be listening, the horse or fox perhaps, about everything on my mind or my thoughts about the world and collective consciousness and unconsciousness. This is where I got the idea for a podcast. I thought of calling it On the Deck, but I'm not sure I could realistically air a podcast outside in the elements year-round. And we get some freakish storms here. Derechos, tornadoes, hurricanes, snowmageddons. And when it's not storming, we have some wicked humidity. Any light from podcast equipment would surely have maybe the target of some winged insect or flying beast of some kind or another. You might not be up late listening to this podcast, but I will indeed be up late recording it. Why am I up late? Well, I am a woman trying to do it all these days, you could say. I am Generation X with a fresh new Gen Alpha baby, 6 months old, named Sophia Braveheart, for a variety of reasons. We are not employing childcare, so I am with my darling new infant 4 days in a row, then seeing my clients in the evening once Dad gets home from work, and I also work Friday through Sunday as well. So I am both a stay-at-home mom, but also still a working professional, which feels insane at times. Is it hard? Absolutely, it is. But as the inspirational activist Claire Wineland said shortly before her death, just because it's hard doesn't mean it's not worth it. If I could stop working, would I want to? That is, if I didn't have massive amounts of student loans to pay off each month. If I could stop working, would I? No, I wouldn't. because my work feels desperately meaningful, especially in today's world, more than any other time in our history. Where else could I possibly get away with speaking on such a deep level than in the office of my depth psychotherapy practice? I thoroughly believe we are a culture dying of malnutrition, and not just physically. We feed off the metaphorical Diet Cokes and quarter pounders of self-expression, the memes, gifs, loves, likes, wows, and angry faces we interact with all day long, every day. We don't communicate anymore. There's a saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but the images I see on a daily basis are often not worth 1,000 words. You know what is still worth 1,000 words? 1,000 words. But are we still writing or listening or speaking from our hearts for that matter? If you post an image online, have it be cute or funny enough, you might hit the jackpot of likes. It takes but a second for our compadres with very short attention spans to view it, like it, and then move on in an unconscious, almost inebriated fashion. But post your deep thoughts on some subject and skip the image or meme, and you're fortunate if a handful of people take the time to read it. And then you might be left feeling like a complete ass for bearing yourself vulnerable to the wolves of social media. What do we need in the midst of this ever-increasing society of superficiality? We need counteracting agents, those people who will continue to speak truth, to bring wisdom and insight to a world that is repetitively choosing to dumb down. I don't have an iPhone. That might be my problem. I don't know. But there is this new way of interacting with text messages between iPhone users where you can like or love messages as you would like or love posts on Facebook. The problem is if you don't have an iPhone, you just receive large scripted responses that relay the fact that the other person liked whatever you had typed to them, and it copies and pastes what you typed to them. So essentially, the other person doesn't even need to respond anymore to a text message. They can like it or love it, and that means I read it, just like on Facebook. I see our society moving in the direction of no communication, or at least in the direction of communication that is more and more surface level, lacking soul. We think we're connecting with others as we scroll through Facebook or Instagram, and sometimes we're actually mindful about it. Sometimes we're actually engaged in meaningful ways, advocating for vital causes, etc. But oftentimes we're not. And thus we compartmentalize a huge facet of our lives, and that includes our minds, our hearts, our souls, our intuition and feelings. We cut off the unconscious, the shadow, which includes both the light and dark aspects of our lives, the unlived parts of our lives, our potential, and we shove so much into the dark closet where no one can see. And we grow weary. Even without knowing it, we grow tired and estranged from ourselves and others. But most sadly, we become strangers to ourselves. At some point, you might notice a constricted feeling in your throat, a sense of tightness, maybe a wheezing sound that comes at the end of a breath. Certainly, there could be a medical reason for this, but there's another possible reason. Now, I'm not advocating for you to believe in the concept of chakras, but I am saying that there is something powerful in the human voice to release and make space for wisdom and clarity and grief and anger and love. And this comes up through the throat as words. So when you continue to push and shove these words back down, there is a restriction and a constriction. We need to talk. We need to speak our truth, even if our voice shakes. We must express ourselves and make the unconscious conscious, or we're doomed to fall into the patterns of the past and repeat them again and again and again. We cannot and will not learn the big truths from a meme. We will not wake up from an article that has to post 20 GIFs to get its point across. I will just stop reading an article like that. Do we not have the attention span to stick with important content anymore in order to make meaning in our lives, that we have to be entertained with rapidly moving celebrity images? Are some of them funny? Sure. But if you just type most popular GIFs of 2018 on your computer, nothing will pop up that makes your life remotely more meaningful. It's filler, it's fluff, it's cheap entertainment to keep us somehow interested. It's the Diet Cokes and French fries of communication. It's called anesthetization. It keeps us distracted until squirrel, our attention is diverted to the next shiny object. It's quite frankly sad. We need to talk. We need to use our voices, and we need to grapple with wounds and truths, no matter how painful and pathetic. We need to speak the truth to our unconscious friends and family, to our unconscious selves, to our oppressors, and to our victimizers, and to our victims. We need to keep speaking, even if the unconsciousness seems too pervasive to make any kind of difference. The premise of depth psychology and depth psychotherapy, which in my experience is profoundly transformative, is that we must invite the unconscious to become conscious. And we do that by making space, through engaging with the roots of our dilemmas, by engaging with our dreams, our emotions, our complexes, those emotional experiences that grip us and hijack our lives at times. Carl Jung wrote, "I had often observed patients whose dreams pointed to a rich store of fantasy material. I got the impression that they were stuffed full of fantasies without their being able to tell me just where the inner pressure lay. I therefore took up a dream image or an association of the patient's, and with this as a point of departure, set him the task of elaborating or developing his theme by giving free rein to his fantasy." Now, don't Google fantasy on the internet, and in particular, don't Google stuffed fantasies, or you're likely to find some truly disturbing material. I don't mean fantasies as in sexual fantasies. Not that there's anything wrong with these fantasies necessarily, but what I mean is that we're stuffed with our own stuff and we aren't working through it. So what happens when the stuffing becomes too much? There is an implosion or an explosion. Implosions would include breakdowns, suicides, deep recesses of depression and addiction. Explosions we often see in the news, depression and meaninglessness turned outwards in the form of murders, active shooter scenarios, and conflicts of all kinds, relational, political, and so on. It's unconsciousness that is being perpetuated. It's denial, it's repression, it's a keeping up of images and appearances, even if these images and appearances are utterly false. At the core of our culture, we are pushing down honesty and self-reflection and the potential for real growth. And we are saying that we'd rather have promotions and lives that are photoshopped, metaphorically or literally, to appear other than who we truly are. And the truth is that at the heart of every one of us is vulnerability. We can cover that up any way we choose, and there are plenty of ways to do it. and we can become more and more isolated under our dump trucks of likes. But the vulnerability, it never goes away. There's an old Zen proverb that says, let go or be dragged. But letting go isn't passive. It involves effort and a willingness to be open and vulnerable and honest. We need this from everyone, but I think at this point in time, we especially need it from women. And we need to make more space for this strong, feminine voice. And we need men to reach out across the aisle and join us. I am Dr. Chace, and you're up late. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight and learned too late. They grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death who see with blinding sight. Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my Father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.